So you are not only an incredible businessman, you are an incredible father, pastor, husband. You juggle it all very well. But you were fathered by a great father. And so when it comes to fathering, we got a room full of men, and we know that 50% of marriages right now end in divorce. We know that the majority of churches are full of women, not men. We know that there is 1 in 4 children in America grow up without a father. How do we begin to shift that narrative? Because we know, even the last word in Malachi is that God would turn the hearts of the children to the father and the hearts of the father to the children. What do we need to understand in this room, and particularly out of your own context? Because you saw it modeled before you.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of men in this room didn't see it modeled. I didn't see it modeled. But I made it up in my mind that I never wanted my children to experience what I experienced or what my sister experienced. So as a father, what wisdom and words for these men, particularly you got husbands, you got sons, you've got husbands that did not know their fathers. You've got fathers that are trying to father and never had a blueprint or a pattern. Like, how do we shift this narrative that the enemy, I think, is really trying to make the permanent narrative about black men as it relates to marriage and parenting?
Yeah. That's a great question. And in fact, when you don't know things, you talk to somebody who does know. I don't claim to know everything, but I have other people in my life that I consider to be a part of my brain trust. So I was having lunch one day with a guy who's in my brain trust. He got his undergraduate from Harvard. He got his PhD from Oxford, England. So he's in my brain trust. I'm like, you've got all of this education. You ought to know something.
Yeah.
And he's Jewish, by the way. But I asked him, I said, is there a real disadvantage in growing up in a household without a father there? And he said to me, it doesn't have to be. He said, as long as you can see it in your neighborhood. If you know a father, a good father in the neighborhood, if it's Johnny's father down the street, if you see it in the neighborhood, and sometimes you can then become impassioned by what you were lacking and turn that passion into a determination that I'm going to give my children what I wished I had. Become the dad to your children that you never had. Let your mind run back where you were as a boy growing up and wondering, because there's something in the heart of every son that really wants to please his dad. But if dad is not there after a period of time, that longing for father turns into a resentment against father, and they start hating him because he wasn't there. And if you retain a man's sin, those sins will be retained in your life. But whose sins you remit, they are remitted. And to keep from becoming the very thing that you hate, you have to forgive your daddy, whether he's alive or dead, and whether he has any sense now or not. You have to release him and his failure, because he might have been living the best that he knew. Maybe he didn't have the father that was involved in his life. My dad was born in 1914. He was in the builder generation. And back during that time, men who loved their families, you didn't even tell them. My father didn't just tell his son, hey, son, I love you. You just picked up on clues. I mean, he brought money home to buy groceries. He worked, that was his way of saying, I love y'all. I'm coming, I came home today, didn't I? I went to work, didn't I? And you have to read their language, just like, if we do something to offend our wives, and we don't know how to say I'm sorry that well. And so men say I'm sorry, but in a different way. It's like, I'm going to the kitchen and get a sandwich. You want something? And that's his way of apologizing. They're like, you want me to get you something? And if she knows him, she's got to read, it's like this dude feeling bad over what he just did to me and how he been talking to me. This is his way of apologizing to me. And so we sometimes have to read back into our own situations and sometimes use the principle of charity with your own father, because otherwise it'll cause you to be resentful, and resentment, when you don't deal properly with it, will turn into bitterness. And the Bible calls then bitterness in Hebrews, it becomes a root of bitterness springing up. Every root will bear fruit. And if you don't deal with it in your life, you'll end up becoming the very man that you hated. And so we have to forgive them for all of their shortcomings. Sometimes they did the best that they knew. And so you let that go and say, God, I'm determined right now that I'm going to give my son, my daughter, what I wish that I had. Then look, whether you have to find another brother in the church, it's a good place to be able to look, whether it's a high school teacher, whether it's a coach, it's somebody, it's an older cousin, it's an older brother, somebody plays that father role. As long as you can see it, now you have a pattern. You have a pattern for becoming something that you wished that you could be. It needs to be in your vicinity. On your job, it's got to be somebody that then becomes that father figure to you. And in the same way, just like my daddy was a businessman, I didn't grow up with a father like that in ministry. I didn't grow up with that. So now where do you get it from? I had to, it's just like you either raise up your own children to help you, or you hire people with your DNA. It's one or the other. So I had to connect with someone as a spiritual father in my life that had my DNA, who didn't happen to be my race, but he had my DNA spiritually. And I recognized it, and I served them. Whatever it is that you want to come down into your life, serve it, and it will increase.
Whoa. You got to say that again.
Whatever you really want to see increase in your life, serve it. Serve it. The anointing that you respect is the anointing that will increase in your life. When you respect Bishop Van, his wisdom, his business strategic mind, as you respect him, that anointing will increase in your life. The anointing that you serve, the anointing that you respect, will increase in your life. Find it. So I didn't have, like I said, my daddy wasn't a preacher. How do I get model? I didn't grow up with a pastor in the home, so I didn't know how to do this. But I connected to someone. When I saw them, there was something that resonated in him and something that quickened in me. It was almost like Mary and Elizabeth. When people are meant for you, there's a chemistry that happens. And that chemistry becomes a divine sign that we are connected in kingdom purpose. And so you didn't come here by accident. I would like to see the hands of those of you in this audience right now. If you were not born in Birmingham, raise your hand. Now take a look around the room. Take a look around the room. God sent you here for a specific reason and a specific purpose. Even your pastor was born in my city. And God sent him. This is an assignment. You're not here by accident, coincidence, nor chance. You're here by the divine providential rule, because God wanted to hook you up with somebody that has a revelation to be able to lift your life and carry you to another level.
So good. All right, I got two questions, and then we're going to ask the other men to join us. But now you talked about being on assignment, and I was reflecting on how Paul tells Timothy to watch out for the trap of disgrace. And when it comes to men, we got a lot of traps that the enemy sets for us. How do you navigate through those traps? And one of the biggest traps is women. You've been successfully married for how long?
38 years.
38 years. You are an OG. How do we stay faithful to our wives? How do we resist the temptation of the girl, maybe who works on our floor, or maybe sometimes just boredom. As we get older and we've been with the same woman for 15, 20 years, and nothing new. Nothing new. Oh, y'all, okay, I guess y'all don't. And nothing new. But from a character and a purity and a destiny perspective, how do we navigate those challenges? Because those are real challenges.
Yeah, they are very real challenges. And this conversation that we'll have, and now this is where the rubber meets the road. But let me just tell you, this character is never a spiritual gift. It will never drop to you like ripe cherries off of a tree. You can't have somebody to lay hands on you and give you character. Character only comes by being forged. It's like taking a hammer and anvil. You have to forge character. It is developed. And how is it forged? It is forged one decision at a time.
That's so good.
Just one decision at a time. People that make good decisions, it equals good character. When good decisions are made in perpetuity, when you keep making one good decision after another good decision after another good decision, when you think about making a good decision, the moment that you have this temptation, and you'll always have it, you'll always have it. You know, in Atlanta and Alabama, you know, you guys have squirrels here, but we had a squirrel there that came and ran across a railroad track, and as soon as it got across the track, it thought that it was fully there, but one of the wheels of the track came around and nipped off a piece of its tail. And then the squirrel turned around to see how much damage was done to his head, and the next wheel decapitated it. And here's the lesson. Don't lose your head over a piece of tail.
Lord, have mercy.
Now let me say this to you. When men do not have a deep sense of meaning, and it is our meaning in life that gives us our fulfillment. That's why God gave Adam a job before he gave him a wife. It's our sense of meaning, our raison d'etre. We get our real sense of meaning. When men do not have a sense of their meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure.
Wow. Wait, say that again, Bishop.
When men do not have a deep sense of meaning in their life, we distract ourselves with pleasure. Whether it is sex, whether it is weed, whether it's something else, whether it's sinful or not, but we distract ourselves with pleasure. It becomes an anesthetic to kill the sense of pain for not being able to see our purpose. And that's why it is so important for every man to come into the knowledge of the reason for which he is born. The two most important days, you know, the day the man is born and the day that he finds out why. And if a man is living in this life and has no understanding as to why he is here, he will misbehave and anesthetize the pain of not being able to live his dream through having sensual kinds of distractions in his life. So it's really about having openness and transparency in your relationship, your spouse being your first source of your accountability partner, where there's openness and honesty in that relationship. Without accountability, it's just impossible to have good character. You can't develop good character alone. It has to be in the context of other human beings. None of the, the first 4 commandments deal with man's relationship with man. Man's relationship with God, man's relationship and his respect for God. But the remaining 6 of the 10 commandments deal with man's relationship with man, man's respect for mankind. And so none of those 6 would even be relevant to you if you were isolated on an island by yourself. You can't commit adultery by yourself. You're not going to be sitting there telling lies to yourself, stealing from yourself. What, you take it from your left pocket and put it in your right pocket? You know, so these things happen in the context of relationship. So in relationship, it takes openness and honesty, where there is, if there's been an offense, that we confess to it and find restoration in that openness. I had a lady that came to me one time, and I couldn't understand it. She made 3 times as much as her husband. He was strung out on drugs, and he had a gambling addiction. And I said to her, why are you still with him? I said, why are you still with him? And she looked at me into my eyes, and she said, because I know that this man will never lie to me.
Wow.
He will never lie to me. And he would go home. I mean, he would get his check, and something would hit him, and he'd go by and spend all of it in lottery money and come home broke. And she said, where you been? He said, well, I got my check, and I cashed it, and I went and I bought lottery tickets. He was totally honest. He didn't do right, and sometimes he'd get up at 2 o'clock in the morning. That cocaine would be calling him. And he'd go out and go to a crack house and get his cocaine, and she's asking, where you been? I went and I did cocaine. And she said, I'm still with this man because I know he'll never lie to me. She said, I can trust that this man will never lie to me. It was the oddest thing. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah. It was the secret of what gave her grace. At least, you know, there's an old saying, the old folks have a saying that says this, that the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. Yeah. So it taught her how to pray for her husband. It taught her how to pray, and now they have the power. You can't come into agreement with secrecy. Secrecy keeps you under the power of darkness. But the moment that you confess, you bring out into the open. Confess your faults one to another. Pray for one another that you may be healed. And too often, we as men have a problem opening up and confessing. When we talk together, we talk about the game, we talk about men with politics, we talk about, you know, yeah, we're balling, man, yeah, I did this, I did that. But we don't talk about the real issues of what's on our mind, what's hurting us, what offended us, the real things that are, if you got some big, hairy, audacious goals and you're really afraid, and this thing is, man, I've lunched out and I started this, but man, I'm scared to death, man, I could lose my house over this. I mean, we don't talk about those things when we get together, but we can sit on a sofa and watch the game together and talk about the game and talk and laugh, and everything will be surface. But when you really open your heart and you share what you're dealing with, now you can uncover this thing and tap into a strength that comes through the power of agreement. And that's what helps in any relationship of accountability.
That's so good. Let me ask you one last question before we bring up the other men that are going to join the panel. There's so much. I wish we had all day because I could ask you so many questions. When you talk about purpose, and I love that when a man doesn't know purpose, he will always anesthetize himself with pleasure. So when we talk about men in purpose, as kings and priests of their own household, we know that also has a financial aspect to it. What wisdom would you give these men and these young men when it comes to leading their family and having a vision for their family financially? We've got business owners in this room. We've got, you know, a variety of different types of leaders, entrepreneurs in this room, successful leaders in their respective field. But we know that the African American family is also still behind when it comes to wealth creation. We know that for every dollar of white wealth, it equals 1 cent in the African American community. Your family and your upbringing, you broke the mold. You know, from grandfather, chemical company, Bronner Brothers, the whole nine. What wisdom would you give to us as it relates to charting a new path of really leading financially, being intentional about wealth creation, so that our kids and our kids' kids' futures are a lot different than ours was, at least when we were coming up?
You know, the greatest gift that my father gave to us was the gift of exposure. it is impossible for you to think beyond your exposure. If you're exposed to something, you know how we are as men? Like if we see something, then we can do it. If you explain it to us, I mean, it's very difficult for me to explain to someone how to tie a shoe and I'm just giving verbal commands. But if you're standing beside me or standing over me and watching me tie that shoe or tie a necktie or tie a bow tie, if you're watching me and then mirroring what you see, we've been taught, to save money. Saving only adds to you. Investing multiplies back to you. It multiplies back to you. We've not been taught, and it is our ignorance in those areas that has intimidated us from actually getting in the field. I drive a Tesla, and my Tesla, with whatever I had put in my car was about $120,000.
Yep.
But I invested more in Tesla stock.
Come on.
My Tesla dividends have more than paid for my car. You gain by the investing strategy, and you have to start while they're really young. My dad, he took in our local church in Atlanta where I grew up, and he helped my pastor build the first $1 million church credit union in the country, in America, back in the 1970s. And so he opened an account for me and all of my brothers, all 5 of my brothers. And my daddy told us, he incentivized it. People will do whatever you incentivize them to do. If you incentivize them to do it. I incentivize my children to read books on money things. You read this book, write me a brief review, and I'm going to pay you $20 for every book that you do. When they was young coming up, I incentivize them. They don't do what you ask them to do. They do what you incentivize them to do. And the world is masterful in their marketing of the carrot that's dangling. We go chasing the carrot. Why don't you put a carrot in front of something? Instead of just having, a baby shower, somebody that got somebody pregnant out of wedlock, why don't we have a business shower when you're trying to open up a business and let friends who believe in your vision come and help you to actually raise some money for your business? And so that's what I started doing. I started doing for years a business competition to where we actually incentivized people, made them write up the best business plan. We put them through a $700 course. We wanted them to make an investment, train them how to walk through this process. And so you have to invest in the knowledge of it first. You need to understand something about stocks and bonds and options and cryptocurrency and be aware of this. And look at different opportunities, even in real estate. Here are a few things that I would say. Number one is to discover all of the opportunities that are available to you. And start while you're young. Start while you're young. Start your kids in it while they're young. Teaching them and exposing them to people that's doing stuff while they're young. Discover is number one. Number two is dream. You dream. You need to discover before you dream, or otherwise you'll dream up stuff that people have already discovered.
Wow.
So you discover to take a landscape of the market to see, is anybody else doing this right here in this area of town? And so discover first, then dream, then design the vision. Create your plan step by step. Design it. You might need some consultation. You might need to research it on the internet. Design it, then do it, then document it so you can then teach it to others.
Incredible. 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 Discover,
dream, design it, do it, document it.
And document it. That's a word. Come on, man. Let's give God praise for Bishop Dale Bronner. I want to invite to the stage a couple of men that have been a part of our 6 weeks of videos that some of you watched, and some men in general that were not a part of the 6 weeks, but we're going to have now a conversation to include a few different voices that we want to really unpack as we continue to talk about leading through it and not bleeding through it. And while they're getting mic'd up, Maybe let's take a question or two. Maybe there's something that Bishop Bronner said that jumped out, or maybe it triggered a deeper thought or a deeper question. While they're getting mic'd up to come on stage, we'll take a couple of questions, maybe one or two questions. Men, anything that Bishop Bronner said that just says, you know what, if I could ask him a question about this, it would be X.
Just clip it on.
And while you guys are thinking about that, let me just say this, that I'm so glad that others are going to be joining. Let me give you this formula. Visionary leaders plus vision times collaboration equals maximum impact. So if you've got a vision and other visionary leaders and collaboration, you get maximum impact. So that's what's about to happen, is collaboration, visionary ideas, visionary leaders, the collaboration, maximum impact. If you want to take whatever you're doing to another level, collaborate with another transformational leader, and it will take you to an exponential level. Ideas piggyback off of each other. And that's why you have to talk to somebody who has something into their belly. Why do you share your dream with somebody who's blind?
Wow.
Share your dream with somebody that can see it, so they can believe with you and encourage you through the deepest and the darkest of your time.
Excellent. Jay, and then brothers, come on up on the stage. I want you to welcome Art Franklin, Aaron Frazier, Brandon Pettigrew, and Kenneth Cox to the stage. Let's give them a great big hand clap of praise. Come on up. Excellent. Jay, your question.
Thank you so much. So yeah, Bishop, first off, thank you so much for being here. I too from Atlanta, and so I'm really happy to have you here. I think that with every attribute that comes and every moment of success that I'm experiencing, there's always a great sacrifice somewhere, you know, and so trying to find that balance between multiple projects, success, family, and then the sacrifice, and then really dividing up that sacrifice, because each one of them that I just mentioned are, you know, requiring more and more of my time and attention. So, you know, how do you balance, you know, with everything that you have going on, how do you balance all that and the sacrifices that you're making to achieve, to continuously achieve?
I pay for that with what I call a different currencies. Whatever it is, every dream has to be paid for with currencies. And here are the three main currencies of life: time, money, and knowledge. Time, money, and knowledge. If I'm lacking knowledge and I've got time and money, I can use my time and money to get knowledge. If I need money and I've got time and knowledge, then I use my time and my knowledge in order to get the money. Whichever of the three, these are the three main currencies of life. The more demands that you have when you start doing other things in other people's world and you get pulled on. So if time is a premium for me, I use my money in order to buy somebody else's time. So now I have that time, so I'm not cutting grass anymore. I grew up cutting grass and trimming hedges and doing all of that. And that's outsourced now, because I can get more money, but I can't get more time. And I don't want to miss those opportunities. So you have to trade off whichever one that's the highest commodity. And your family, no matter whatever you do, they ultimately spell love, T-I-M-E.
That's good. Well, brothers, welcome to the stage.
Good to see you.
Dr. Kenneth Cox, Art Franklin, Brandon Pettigrew, Pastor Aaron Frazier. Come on, let's thank God for them. So